Have you ever wondered what it was like to live in a world where no one understands you? Growing up, I could not help but notice that one of my younger cousins was not acting normal. He was a little different. His speech was often slurred and repetitive. He struggled to keep eye contact when talking with others, and he had a crazy obsession with fans and helicopters. His name is Danny, and he suffers from autism spectrum disorder, or autism for short. Some parents take it for granted when us kids talk too much, ask so many questions, or fool around. However, we tend to forget that there are some parents that do not get that right away. Today, I am here to inform you about autism, but more specifically, I am going to discuss 4 aspects: the background of autism, the spectrum, any common misconceptions and myths surrounding autism, and the positive side of living with autism. First, I'm going to talk about the background of autism, including its definition, causes, and symptoms. Doctors Christine Cherney and Jill Salati-Chulman define autism as a broad term used to describe a group of neurodevelopmental conditions. But what causes autism? Although the exact cause of autism is unknown, the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke infer that both genetics and environment determine whether a person develops autism. Common suspected risk factors include having an autistic family member, genetic mutations and disorders, born to older parents, born with a low birth weight, metabolic imbalances, exposure to toxins, maternal history of viral infections. Now that we know what could cause autism, what symptoms are associated with it? From a 2021 case study of 6 kids with autism, it was determined that symptoms usually persist throughout the whole life, but usually appear within the first year. It was found that the most common symptoms include delayed speech and language development, difficulties in social interaction, and restricted behavioral patterns. Due to autism's variety of signs and symptoms and their differences in severity, there is something called the spectrum, which we are going to look at next. Second, I am going to discuss the spectrum and what it means to be on the spectrum. As noted by Anna Goddard and Dr. Timothy J. Legg, a mental health nurse, no 2 people with autism have the exact same set of symptoms. Dr. Chista Martin, director of Geisner's Autism and Developmental Medicine Institute, says that every individual with autism is unique, and symptoms can range from mild to severe. This is what is meant when one refers to the spectrum. People with autism share certain traits, but at different degrees. Lisa J. Rudy, a consultant specializing in the field of autism and a mother of a young adult with autism, states that there are 3 levels. The first level requires the least support. Some symptoms include having a hard time communicating, but usually are able to speak in full sentences, having trouble moving from one activity to the next, and problems with organization and planning. For level 2, there are more obvious problems with verbal and social communication. They tend to speak in simple sentences and have very narrow interests. The third level requires very substantial support. This level is the most extreme. Individuals placed in level 3 have a very limited ability to speak clearly, and it is harder to deal with a change in focus or direction. Now that we have learned about the spectrum, since there's a lot of misinformation circulating about autism, next I'm going to inform you on what you need to know to decipher fact from fiction. Third, there are many misconceptions and myths about autism. Mary Doherty of Autistic Doctors International stated that common myths surrounding autistic people are that they are incompatible with a medical career, lack empathy, exhibit poor mental health outcomes, and show increased anxiety and depression. Also, in 2018, an exploratory study, 5 focus groups with undergraduate and postgraduate students and adults with and without experiences of autism were selected. Participants were encouraged to reflect on what they believed and what they had heard about autism through a series of open-ended questions. The first myth was that autistic people are not interested in social relationships. A participant who had experience responded by saying that they enjoy initiating social interactions. Another myth was that autistic people unlike physical contact. A participant with no experience expressed uncertainty about its validity, and a participant with experience said they love hugs. A third myth was that they are unable to notice social rejection. A participant with no experience said that he has an autistic friend that was bullied by peers, and he was fully aware of the negativity towards him. The final myth was that autistic people are mad, meaning mental. A person with no experience said that his understanding changed after a psychology lecture. These findings demonstrate that people with varying experience and knowledge of autism are not only hold inaccurate beliefs about autism, but also are willing to reflect and adapt their views. Identifying myths and views about autism will help improve lay understandings of autism. Now that we have debunked some of the common myths about autism, rather than focusing on the negatives and what they cannot do, I'm going to talk about the positive side and what autistic people can do. Fourth, I'm going to talk about the positives of autism. Maureen Benny, a parent of 2 young adults on the autistic spectrum, stated that autistic people pay attention to detail, have deep focus, have great observation skills, absorb and retain facts quickly, exhibit visual skills, are highly creative, and have resilience and integrity. Also, Ginny Russell, author of Autism in Adult, interviewed 28 autistic adults and found that they have specific qualities relating to social interactions such as honesty, loyalty, and empathy. Lastly, Heather Mackenzie, author of Reaching and Teaching the Child with Autism Spectrum Disorder, noted that autistic people exhibit strengths in the areas of visual spatial, musical rhythmic, and bodily kinesthetic. She stated they have the ability to create visual experiences, have orderliness, seek out music and rhythm, and listens with interest, responds to a variety of musical and rhythmic sounds, recalls the music, and learns more readily when they can move their body or parts of their body. From her research, 40% of parents indicated that musical rhythmic strengths were top ranked for their children, and almost 40% of parents reported visual spatial strengths as being top ranked for their children. In conclusion, today we talked about the background of autism, including its definition, causes, and symptoms, what the spectrum is and what it means to be on the spectrum, common misconceptions or myths, and the positives of autism. In the textbook Psychology, Themes and Variations, Wayne Wheaton infers that since the mid-1990s, there has been a dramatic increase in the diagnosis of autism. Since there is greater awareness of autism, it is important to be aware of the facts before making assumptions about others. In Psychology Today, John E. Robinson says that the essence of neurodiversity shows the range of diversity, as people who have these differences are not defective. They are natural. And autism can be a gift or a disability. Author Rick Morton wrote, "The idea of neurodiversity is not about being anti-treatment or anti-neurotypical. It's about helping a person to be the best autistic person they can be." Being a parent of an autistic child means working extra hard to understand them, and by doing so, they are opening their eyes to a whole different world. Thank you.